Yeah, I wish I'd put ChatGPT through that security line myself. There, let me just kind of give you two anecdotes and then try to generalize it. On New Year's Day this year, I just looked in my news feed and I saw this tweet that Andrej Karpathy, who is who was the guy at Tesla who did the autopilot, tweeted saying 80% of the code he writes today is being written by GitHub Copilot. Think about this, right? This is one of the most elite AI developers who is saying that they're being that much more productive. It's not that Andrej is not doing great AI work. It's just that he's getting a ton of leverage. And that's perhaps been the breakthrough product of this generation of AI in the last year. And it's a real product. It's not some research project somewhere, what have you. I mean, this is some literally changing the productivity curve for some of the most, for software engineers, which was considered the knowledge worker, or rather the most sort of difficult to automate knowledge work, so to speak. And so that's one. Then the next day, I was in India, and I saw this demo, which was just completely stunning for me. I saw someone use one of the Indian vernacular languages, talking to a bot that Microsoft Research, along with our partners from the Ministry of Electronics, and a program called Bhashini, which is about trying to basically use AI to get language translation to be democratized in India. But so here's essentially someone who's in rural India using one of their of a local language, talking to a bot on WhatsApp, and this bot, basically this person wanted to have access to some government program. And so he asks about the program. The bot comes back and says, you should go to the portal and do X, Y, and Z. And he then goes on to say that, look, I don't want to go to the portal, just do this for me. And so this is someone in rural India sort of expressing a pretty complex thought, even if they may not be all literate about how to navigate some complex set of instructions. And then on the back end of it, what the team had done was used GPT to essentially train over all of Government of India's documents and made it accessible in every Indian language and made it automatable. So think about this. I'd never seen in my life, at least in the 30 years I've been in tech, ever a demo where an advance that happened in, say, West Coast of the United States shows up in very real terms for someone in rural India within months. I mean, that is diffusion of technology that I've never seen. I don't think it happened in the Industrial Revolution, but maybe this time around, in what is sort of the knowledge worker equivalent of the Industrial Revolution, it's going to help everybody. So these two things, so the most elite AI developer on one end, and on the other end, there is a rural farmer in India being able to access government programs through AI. So those two anecdotes speak to me at least what the power of this thing is. I think that's the key. So what you just said was, why is there so much more excitement this year than last year? Is because of that exponential growth of the power of these models. I'm not claiming, by the way, that this is the last innovation in AI or this is the last model architecture. There's going to be lots more to come. But if you look at what has happened between GPT-3 to 3.5 to what comes next, these are not linear areas. This is not linear progress.
Okay, but the slightly pessimist case, you're an optimist on this, would be it's exciting, it's rapidly moving, it's a bit terrifying. Knowledge workers, I heard it already here at Davos this week, already anxious in some ways about their future jobs and what it means. When you see technology spread on that scale, I have to ask, one, are we societally ready for that? And are you really confident that there's the optimist case that it enhances all of our productivity rather than replaces many of us?
It's the right question to ask. I mean, look, I mean, the first thing I step back and say, when I look at all productivity data, I look at all economic growth data, I sort of look at that and say, God, we need something to help us. It's not like we're, as a world, growing at inflation-adjusted 3-4%. If we really have the dream that the 8 billion people plus in the world, their living standards monotonically should keep improving year over year, what is that input that's going to cause that? Like what, we need, and we have some tough challenges, right? When you think about energy transition, let's just take that for an example. Essentially what we are saying, at least the way I, as a layperson, understand it, is you got to take 250 years of chemistry and compress it into some 25 years so that we can then make it to the other side. If that is the case, computational chemistry is going to be super important. And so applications of AI to that is probably the way we're going to make it. So I look at it and say, we need something that truly changes the productivity curve so that we can have real economic growth. And then if you have that, there are all kinds of things that we can talk about, which is what does it mean to displacement, which will be real. After all, there was displacement in the Industrial Revolution. We went through some lot of hardship to come up with even an understanding of how to deal with it. This time around, we have that understanding. So therefore, I would say, first, let's not fall into what is the lump of labor fallacy. If you don't fall for that, then what are all the new jobs? What is the training required? And here's one other thing I'd say, Matt, which if you think about the way frontline workers today are being enabled with technology to be able to do what was previously perhaps considered knowledge work, is probably the biggest thing that is underreported, underwritten about. Then, we have at Microsoft a tool called Power Platform, right? So think of it as what is essentially it's Excel level skills at best, even lower, where you can take that tool and create applications, create workflows. In fact, you can use GPT to essentially prompt a workflow. So that means somebody who's in the retail frontline, warehouse frontline, healthcare frontline, pick your favorite frontline job, where they're not IT specialists, they're not skilled in computer science, they can, in fact, participate in the digital transformation of their org. If they do that, what happens next is better wages, because they're now considered to be not just doing frontline work, but are also participating in what was previously knowledge work. So to me, that's an example of, in fact, people participating in the labor force with better support. Look, I mean, I think the thing that all the concerns we have around safety, whether it's harmful content or hallucination or any of these, you just need to, by design, all software engineering has to shift left. You have to sort of think about the model itself being safe. Then you have to, on top of it, have a safety system that is built. And so you have to really take this as a first-class engineering concern and build. And this is not new to just AI. It's true in any other category of software today as well.
But
the way at least I come at it is I grew up with sort of the PC revolution starting in the late 80s. And it was just an empowering moment, right? I mean, even if you think about my own story, I mean, the way I was able to sort of have this technology reach me where I was growing up and be able to sort of get into it, and then, and the rest is, history. So therefore, I look at it and say it doesn't matter if you are a knowledge worker or a frontline worker, use these tools to actually then get more leverage in your job. If Andrej, as a software developer in AI, can do that, why can't all of us have access to it? If that farmer in rural India can use this technology to get their job done, that's the way. I think the best way to prepare for it is to sort of not bet against this technology and this technology helping you in your job, in your business process. And especially at a time like this, Matt, like here we are, right? We have inflation, we have all of this macroeconomic headwinds. Doing more with less is perhaps more at a premium. And so if I find any technology that allows us to be more productive, let's take that. And then let's create that economic surplus and then talk about how to distribute it in all the ways. And there are many, many mechanisms one can talk about. Yeah, I mean, I think the point is if there's more automation and like take even what's happening with tech jobs today. Interestingly enough, if you look at it, there was, as tech supply in what is considered the tech industry is now sort of basically getting more distributed because every auto company, every pharma company, every retail company needs to hire tech people. So to some degree, we should not think of automation in one company to mean that that person is not required elsewhere. And so the question is, what is the overall capacity for the economy and society to absorb and create new jobs? And that, I think, is going to be the real... And then the other thing that we should also have is wage support for different jobs. I've always felt like, why is there such disparity today in the labor market between, let's say, some care worker and let's call it sort of a software developer? And it's because we think of that we as a society have decided to give it different, I'd say, premium. Those premiums will adjust as some of these technologies. The idea that every country has to have social cohesion based on the jobs and the economic opportunity, I think, is much better understood today than, let's call it, the first phase of globalization. Whatever happens in the sort of this phase of globalization is not going to repeat the mistakes of the previous era, where when there is displacement happening in a society, I think everybody's going to focus on what do we do about those people who are getting displaced, getting trained, getting new jobs. So I think now we have to, in some sense, to your point, really account for both forces. A globalization force, David Ricardo was not wrong. There is going to be comparative advantage of nations, and things will still exist where there is a reason why people will want to globalize. But at the same time, every politician gets elected because of local politics, and they're going to care a lot more about jobs locally. And so therefore, in fact, that's the right balance to have. Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the hardest things that you learn in a tech company. We're 48 years old today, and it's hard because you have to adjust. The means of production, essentially, in our tech business changed dramatically, and that it requires us to unlearn and learn, which is always very unforgiving, quite frankly. And if you look at what even these large models or foundational models are, it's very different. In fact, I would say one of the things that is perhaps the toughest thing is the previous era AI expert is the one that is going to have the hardest time shifting to this new paradigm, because everything, all the assumptions, oh my God, here's my data, I'm going to train on that data, my data is the only thing that matters. All that's now questioned. You now have a large model which can be used as a retrieval engine on your data that's going to perform better than sort of something that you trained on on your data. I mean, just the intuition, just so that people have what this is suppose you train a model on, let's say, all the math formulas. Yeah, it'll get pretty efficient in math. But let's say you train a model on all the math formulas and all the human text there is on the web. It gets better at math. And you say, wow, how is that possible? Of course it's possible, because when we went to school, it's not like we just learned math. We learned history, we learned language. And so, yeah, so that emergent capability is a pretty different thing than like where we were even a couple of years ago as state of the art in terms of AI. So I'm an electrical engineer who never understood the Maxwell's equations. So now I finally get, thanks to ChatGPT, a better understanding of it. So I think one of the things is we will all enjoy a lot more math because we will have that personalized tutor who will, in fact, be able to intervene at the crucial time when you're making a conceptual mistake and help you learn. So just imagine that. What if there was a fantastic tutor teacher for every student learning math going forward? That is now possible. And GPT family of models, this is something that we've been partnered with OpenAI deeply now for multiple years. And we built in Azure, our public cloud infrastructure, an AI supercomputer, which, by the way, as a systems architecture has been a massive breakthrough, because the way these workloads or the way you train large models is very different than anything out there. It's a much more large-scale, synchronous, distributed job. So we had to build the system from storage to compute to network that really allowed us to even build this capability. So at this point, the way Microsoft's going to really commercialize all of this is Azure has become the place for anybody and everybody who thinks about AI and large-scale training. And we're way ahead on that, and we continue to plan to sort of really step it up there. Second is we're going to make these foundational models available as platforms. So that means anybody who wants to build on them